Good afternoon and welcome to PAC Print Plus Philippines VX, the country's first virtual event for the packaging, printing, and plastics industries. Before we proceed, let us be reminded of the following house rules. There will be a Q&A portion at the end of the presentation. You may ask your questions using the chat box and send your questions to all panelists. It's possible that not all questions will be answered live, but we will email the list of questions and answers to all attendees after the webinar. To start the program, let us have the welcome remarks from the past president and trustee of the Philippine Center for Print Excellence Foundation Incorporated. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause please for Mr. Alan Asi.
Good afternoon. I hope you're having a good day. First of all, I would like to thank everyone for participating in our webinar programs with the theme Business Survival Programs in the New Normal. The presentation of the next speaker is very important in all industries. This can be seen in the recent impact of the pandemic in the businesses. This is our supply chain. This webinar aims to present how supply chain can be the main driver of business sustainability and resiliency. I am sure we will learn a lot from this speaker, as he is very knowledgeable when it comes to the supply chain industry. Thank you very much to our speaker, and I hope everyone will have a fruitful time here in the webinar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alan Asi. Our speaker for this session will talk about directions of supply chain, procurement, and logistics in the new world. With us is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Procurement and Supply Institute of Asia. Let us welcome to the virtual stage, Mr. Charlie Villaseñor.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I hope my slides would be ready by Ed already. First of all, sorry for a little bit of a delay. I have three subscriptions on internet, and I think all at the same time they're acting up. Anyway, let's move on for the interest of time. The topic that I hope to share with you is about directions on supply chain, procurement, and logistics. I think this is a very important topic, particularly to your industry. PAC Print Plus, a lot of you are actually part of the supply chain, and the industry is actually very dependent on you. But you yourself have your own trials and challenges as well. So let me just recap. So when I was actually thinking of what to share to you today, next please, I wanted to actually bring about my exposure and my experience to the real world. I used to work with several companies that uses a lot of your materials and your services and your supplies. So companies that use a lot of packaging, plastic, print are companies like 3M, Coca-Cola, Caltex, Chevron, So all of these companies are using a lot of the items that you're actually providing in the industry. So I have my own fair share of experience into this. More importantly, I actually pioneered e-procurement and e-commerce in the Philippines since in 1995. When I was in Caltex, we pioneered e-commerce through what we call electronic procurement. And it has impacted on. I moved on to a company called Buy and Trade before to be able to help many organizations to actually move into e-commerce. So what has happened across 2000 to 2020, that's a lot of 20 years behind us. But suddenly everybody's actually changing courses and moving towards electronic commerce. An hour ago, I just came from a very large bank who actually gets to talk about e-commerce for a lot of their clients as well. Next, please. So when I actually think about what to share with you, I actually wanted to make sure that I give you a little bit of a background of our organization, but I spend more time trying to tell you what's going on in the real world. with the pandemic, with COVID, with the revolution on e-commerce actually developing. And just to give a little bit a slide of where I'm coming from, I actually founded an organization that's actually charged towards professionalizing procurement, supply chain, and logistics. We are the largest institute in the world, and we're actually delivering a lot of capacity building interventions for individuals, professionals, and companies on this particular area. We actually have our shared services company that helps provide consulting services and technology for many organizations to keep up with the demanding pace of supply chain. So next, please. So when I actually thought that this would be a very significant industry that's going to be challenged and also have a lot of opportunities, I thought of narrowing in on three important areas, which I think is very relevant for you. The attendees could be business owners. The attendees could be professionals or executives of various companies coming from buy side and the supply side. And some of you may be students or even from the academy as well, or professionals who are looking into new opportunities from where they are right now to where the economy and the opportunities are going to be headed. So let me just narrow into three areas. One is like, let me give you a landscape of what's going on with COVID and what would be the new world with regards to supply chain, how it's actually impacting business and economy as well. More importantly, I think we are going to be facing a lot of supply chain disruptions. I am sure you're all probably like feeling the pain and the chaos and all of the chaotic environment that's actually coming into our way right now. We're just on round one. This is not yet the end game of it. We're expecting a lot of disruptions and challenges as well. And hopefully we can turn this into an opportunity for several of you. But we are here to also share with you what companies are actually doing to actually fortify their supply chains. Because at the end of the day, companies are going to be so reliant on their supply chain. Next. So as you can see, business is challenged a lot. First and foremost, we have seen a lot of layoff already. So we have to accept the fact that people and companies are impacted. This is simply because actions has to be taken because cash and liquidity are pretty much challenged right now. The balance sheet is under attack and it's not showing any good proof that it's going to be going to live by in the next 2 to 3 years. Suppliers are increasing challenges also. Some of the suppliers doesn't even know that they're already bankrupt, but they're still trying to operate. So the easiest way is to actually cut people, cut on costs. But you'll see that even labor is actually getting a lot of shortages as well. There are going to be more and more supply issues, not only about getting it supplied, but there are a lot of regulations on sustainability, on environmental compliance and the like. And suppliers are being assessed right now. And when you get to see and assess suppliers, the problem is like suppliers needs to validate and be verified and be conducted a due diligence if they are able to perform their function to their customers. There's going to be quite a lot of inventory. There's going to be a lot of surplus and lack of inventory. The principle of just in time may seem not to work this time. Many companies have resorted to what we call just in case scenario. You will feel that there's going to be more regulation coming along our way, coming from the government, because even the government is also keeping up with the new phase of challenges also. And companies would normally experience ups and downs. And sometimes we call it peaks and valleys, good volume or high volume, or sometimes very low volume or no volume at all. Next, please. So how do we actually keep up? Let me share with you that in the last 2 weeks, there was a study that was done by PwC, a global company, consulting company, together with the Management Association of the Philippines, which I am also involved with. And the result was quite very confronting. No, the CEOs are saying, a lot of the CEOs of the country in the Philippines are saying that, and 70% believe that the economy will slow down and will contract in 2020, which is actually this year. I think we are all accepting that fact. But the harsh truth about this is, look at the percentages. A good 36 and 22, which is more than 50%, thinks that our economy is going to go down 50%. this is quite alarming and shocking, no? So it just gives us a feeling that CEO doesn't have the level of confidence to be able to survive, in this particular economic scenario. But let us take a look at the other findings of the survey. Next, please. There are two things that the findings actually revealed also. And again, very, very surprisingly, companies are laying off people. 37% workforce reduction. They think that is the best solution, or that is a solution that they cannot avoid. But a good portion of that, 57%, are going to implement sustainable practices. That sustainable practices is going to impact, packaging, printing, and plastic industry significantly. But the two most outstanding revelation was that they said that 80% of the companies will need to embrace digitalization. And the other thing that really was the most highest the CEO feedback was that they will do all possible things to implement cost containment. How do they do that? They're going to find ways to cut on costs as quickly as possible. Many of these companies are already in the Philippines trying to change workplace safety measures. They're trying to implement work from home. They're trying to implement digital. They're trying to implement a lot of things, and everybody is accelerating business process automation. Even in our company, in our institute, we're doing a lot of things to really embark to very aggressive implementation of technology. Next, please. So why are we supposed to be concerned? Because if this is the scenario that we are actually facing, we need to really understand what we all mean by supply chain. I don't know how many hundreds or thousands listening right now who are actually coming from a supply chain academic background, meaning to say you took supply chain as a course or as a college degree. But I'm willing to bet that most of you are not coming from a supply chain perspective or an educational background. So let me probably give you a little bit about a snapshot of what supply chain. It's basically a network of organizations linked together to produce a new value for the ultimate consumer. The supplier, manufacturer, distributor, retailer, and customer. And across the area is a tremendous amount of activity and work and balancing that has to be done across the enterprise and outside the enterprise as well. And there are the three more important things that companies are trying to juggle. They're trying to juggle information flow, physical flow, and cash flow. And for what we call in PASIA, we call it companies in supply chain has to plan, has to source, and has how to move. And when we talk about supply chain planning, it talks about demand forecasting, supply planning, inventory management. When we talk about procurement, we don't just talk about tactical buying. Buying is easy, but companies have actually moved towards what we call strategic sourcing, which I'm going to talk to you a little bit more later on, because a lot of you, if you are a supplier, you will be exposed to some of the activities of what we call strategic sourcing. And the other thing that is a significant pillar of the PACE is actually logistics. When we talk about transportation, warehouse distribution, warehouse is basically the bank of the company. What's in the warehouse are assets of the organization. So why is supply chain very important? Because without good supply chain, companies are going to go bankrupt. And why do I say that? It is directly proportional and it has a direct correlationship within profitability and supply chain efficiency. If you take a look at this pillar or this pyramid, the only way to get good return on investment is making sure that your purchasing cost, inbound cost, manufacturing cost, outbound cost, value and inventory has to support and be the most advantageous or the most cost economical for the organization. If you don't handle this well, you're not going to compete well with your competitors, because your competitor who has better supply chain is going to be much more advanced and provocative to win the market over you. So that's the reason that before supply chain was not talked about. People want jobs in marketing or sales or finance, but more and more people want job in supply chain. And the supply chain leader comes to become usually the leader of the organization, because any business of a company is all about supply chain business. Next, please. In supply chain, especially now with the pandemic, you're basically doing three things. And most of the time, you're managing risk. There's a lot of risk, internal risk, external risk, internal risk of operations of your company, external risk who are your customers who are having very unpredictable demand, suppliers who cannot cope up with your requirements on time. Second thing is value creation. Companies are going to compete on how they actually move towards value creation. Have you seen the movement on e-commerce, on buying your food out of the usual, e-commerce delivery couriers type of thing? It has changed a lot. They were able to find out new value proposition. Will it happen to the pack print industry, pack print glass industry? Of course, it's going to happen as well. And the third thing that they get to balance is about cost. In supply chain, we are not looking for the lowest price. I always tell that to my peers and colleagues. The more important thing is to be able to have the assurance of supply, have the right level of quality, service costs, but more importantly, innovation, and to comply with all of the regulatory requirements, and to provide good governance in terms of sustainability. I'm not going to teach you more about supply chain, but I just wanted to make sure that all of us from the buy side and the supply side gets to be at the same page on how to understand appropriately what supply chain is all about. Because the backbone of your industry, the backbone of your company, you're not going to survive without a good supply chain. And that's something for sure. Next, please. So supply chains is where the focus is. Companies are not going to compete on the products or the item that they sell. Companies are going to compete on their supply chain. It's about efficiency and effectiveness. And it's how good your supply chain is going to be. Next, please. If you take a look at the global scenario because of COVID-19, you will find out that a good portion of probably what you're actually buying are also coming out of China, diba? Or some of it are being bought overseas. That's going to change because companies and countries are trying to ascertain that they have the good part of the supply as well. And a lot of disruptions. And the survey actually conducted that I'm showing to here, it's like 73% are encountering problems with their suppliers. 75% are having issues about their production and distribution. And it's normal because logistics transportation is hampered a lot. 85% of businesses are trying to struggle because they don't have significant digital technologies in place. I can just imagine how difficult for you to sell to your customers because you cannot go to your customers because your customers are working probably at home. They won't probably get to see you at their homes, right? And it's very hard to sell something when you cannot meet the customer that you're trying to even prospect or sell additional volume. Yes, there's emails, there's Zoom, but the adaptability is not so prevalent or so efficient as we normally would get to do before. Next, please. So there's going to be a lot of changes. It's creating what we call a bullwhip effect. Every manufacturing company have their own suppliers, and one of the suppliers goes down, it has its own suppliers, so it actually goes into a domino effect. Lahat apektado. Everybody is affected right now because it's a chain reaction. Then the balance sheet of these companies are going to be weak. There's going to be some industry consolidations. As I've said, many of the suppliers, they don't even know what's happening. And with little or advanced information or warning, they find themselves unable to pay the employees' salaries. And there's going to be more focus on nationalism. There's going to be more focus on globalization. And there are two schools of thought. But from my experience, nationalism has never been a positive force for business or world peace. If companies or countries are going to behave and to support only their interests, there could be war that can actually break out, or there can be more animosity among nations. And that is not good for trade. They always say, and we expect this, that for countries that have enjoyed significantly good trade and economy, and as Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, we have been enjoying this. But we are not as big as the other countries. So we're going to get hit and hard because we are just a small economy as compared to the big economies of the world. Next, please. So there's a lot of things. We need to have more increasing resilience on our supply chain. We need to make sure that this is really under control. We have taken initiatives to source materials from alternative suppliers also. We should consider increasing our suppliers that is within your region or your country or nearby. You need to centralize the planning. You know, planning is very important. The consumer and the customer behaviors are quite very erratic right now. But in order to meet these types of requirements, the workforce has to be skilled. Unfortunately, in any company, a lot of people working in supply chain are underperforming and underskilled and undereducated on what supply chain is all about. Companies hasn't spent money on rebuilding and reskilling their workforce. So if you cannot get it from within your company, you have an option. Either you hire new people or you outsource or outtask some of that particular function for those who can actually do it better. So supply chain requires a lot of focus and attention to actually be reinforced in terms of reskilling it and improving their talent base as well. Next, please. We're all living in a VUCA world, you know. Yung VUCA world is volatile, nakakatakot, no? And uncertain ang business. And it's getting to be more complex. In fact, they're saying whether our economy is going to recover U-shape or V-shape. But what I see is like our economy will happen in two areas, which I call K-shape. When I say K-shape, a lot of companies is going to close down. But there will be new industries and new companies that's going to survive and thrive as well. But this is not good news for everybody because there will be a lot of casualties. So companies and individuals has to have new focus. They have to have new vision. They have to take action. They have to understand and have different perspectives of what they can potentially do. They have to be very clear and flexible of what they're able to claim, address, you know, and monetize. Where can they make new money or new business? If their model is not sustainable this time, they have to create new models and re-engineer their entire back office or supply chain as well. But companies who are lean, mean, flexible, and agile are going to win because these companies are going to significantly be under a lot of pressure to innovate and do decision-making as well. Next, please. So the next part of my presentation is like, how can we as individuals and companies respond? You know, after this course, what can you tell your family? What can you tell your bosses or your colleagues in the company? You know, I always say that this is the best time. Next, please. This is the best time to actually take a look at your own business strategy and taking a look not only about your business or your work or your job. I think you should, as an individual, look at your own family or individual strategy. If this pandemic scenario is going to last for the next 3 to 4 years, are you able to survive this? Do you have a strategy on surviving? If jobs doesn't come back to where it used to be before, how are you going to organize yourself? If you're a person working in a company, how are you going to reskill and optimize the available team or workforce that you have? What are the processes that needs to be re-engineered or reconfigured? Are you going to outsource? Are you going to get augmentation? Are you going to outtask small processes for somebody who has to do it? Do you have to work with your competitors? Yeah. Do you want to be bought out by your own customers? And what are the available tools in terms of technology and digitalization? So leadership, strategy, and most importantly, implementation is very key. And you're really fighting for time here because time is not always available. You know, you're competing with time because other people and other entities are trying to cope up also, trying to compete with you or trying to determine their next course of action. Next, please. So there are so many potential strategies that you can implement. But the first thing that you need to implement as an organization is to ensure that your employees are okay. You have to have crisis management team that is already available. There's going to be crisis and crisis and crisis after another crisis. So the crisis team has to always be available. They have to make sure that they have a very pragmatic way of running their business. the numbers should be controlled, not the numbers controlling the people. So things like what I call sales and operating planning, or sales or operating or integrated business management plan, is very important. It's something to do about understanding what your demand is, what your supply capabilities, what's going to become the scenario of the business, and managing capacity constraints. And your plan has to be within 1 to 6 months, 6 to 18 months, and 18 to 36 months. You cannot just jump into another 48 or 36 months time of planning, because you might not even reach 6 months. So you need to combat and put the organization in a combat mode. You need to mitigate all of the risks, and you need to transform the organization into new ways of doing things. Training your people in supply chain is going to be important more than ever. The setting up of business continuity plans are going to be much more demanded and needed, because, as I've said, this is just round one. We should not feel very comfortable that when the vaccine is available, everything will be back into normal. Nothing is assured about the vaccine. And if the vaccine is not assured, your only bar of survival is managing your supply chain. You know, without good supply chain, we will not get good vaccine. We will not get PPEs. We will not get doctors or hospitals or beds. Everything is dependent on the nation's capability of a good supply chain. Do you think we have the plan right now to addressing all of those needs? And are we seeing it right now in our own eyes? So quite important to take a look at that particular arena as well. Next, please. So the importance and the rise of supply chain leaders is going to be very, very high. You know, finding supply chain talent is extremely challenging, somewhat challenging. There's no adequate supply of people who are really good in this particular area. You know, we have more midwives or nurses or waiters or BPO professionals, but we haven't really forced ourselves to really be precise and exact into this particular area. So companies also are hard-pressed getting the right talent and hiring them. But the most difficult thing is also keeping talent, because talent moves from one point to another point who can actually provide them better salaries or better rates. You know, I was surprised when I saw an article last 2 weeks ago. Amazon is going to hire, you know, millions of people working in their company. I think thousands or millions of companies. And you know what is the minimum average rate of compensation? $150,000 per year. In some sense, that's a very big, you know, unimaginable amount of money that a Filipino supply chain professional would love to have, you know, support it out of the Philippines, do it out of the Philippines, and support, you know, high-cost countries on that particular necessary skills. So I could just encourage people to really take a look at this, because it's going to be an opportunity, but we are unprepared, but we need to prepare. We still have a lot of time to actually improve on this particular area. So skills development is the most important thing. So when you're trying to save your money today, you can save your money on luxurious items, but I guess you should actually use your money to re-equip or re-skill yourself going forward. Next, please. So continuing talent development is very important, and we can do it online. We can, you know what, one of the things that you can also figure out is, like, we're now dealing with a new set of people. The workforce is going to be comprised of millennials and Generation Z. 80% of people working in supply chain will be Generation Z and millennials by 2025. That's only like 5 years from now, right? And they don't want to be taught the classroom way. They want to be learning through e-learning, through coaching, through project management, to real actual experience. In our company, we are hiring a lot of college people, not yet graduate. We're hiring a lot of people that are just recently graduate that cannot get a job right now. We are training them a lot, and we're paying them some good money. The good thing is, like, they're being paid, they're working at home, you know, and they're getting trained, and not only trained, certification. We guarantee that we're going to certify them after a rigorous training process and hands-on work inside our company. and we are actually getting it into batch mode. A lot of students, young students, are getting into this program, and I think it's getting them so excited about what they're actually seeing in this particular area. Next, please. So there are a lot of things that these students and these new graduates are experiencing in our company, because our company is really focused on supply chain best practices. They get exposed on what are the real best practices. We're not a company processing a particular packaging material or so. What we give them are actual best practices that we are extending to our customers. So I don't have the time and the luxury to explain this one by one. But these people are being trained in sales and operations planning, in master data management, in demand-driven supply chain solution, in strategic sourcing, on e-procurement. A lot of people are really getting into our marketplace, which I'm going to share with you later on. But we're telling them and training them into warehouse management, transportation management. And these types of skills are quite good in terms of salaries that they're getting from big companies and people working on this particular segment. Next, please. So companies, we recommend, even though you're a small company, in fact, we're helping so many small companies nowadays. Small companies more than ever needs to move fast, because smaller companies doesn't have a luxury of resources. So small, medium, and large companies should be able to combat, mitigate, and transform. There are a lot of things that they can do within 3 to 36 months horizon. They don't have to do everything at one go. They have to understand that they have to chunk it out into periods of things that they could actually manage around. But they should be very precise that these are the best practice and this is the only way to run their business. Supply chain is a science. It's not a guesswork. It's not just common sense. You have to follow some algorithm and some processes to be able to maximize your working capital and to be able to satisfy customer demand and requirements. Next, please. So another good practice is what I call sales and operations planning. So for companies implementing good operations in their factories or order plant, they need to enhance it further. Enhancing it is implementing things like integrated business management or integrated supply, sales and operations planning. This is basically balancing supply and demand and making sure that customer requirements are adhered or committed and served very well at the most optimum cost. So the benefit of S&OP is to really improve service, reduce cost, and improve working capital management. Nandito na ang labanan ng mga kumpanya ngayon on how good companies are really going to be able to address this. Next, please. And as I can say all of the time, procurement or purchasing or strategic sourcing is very important, more than this particular slide. So this thing about buying is easy, but companies are moving towards strategic sourcing now. They are looking at best practices on how to buy better, by volume concentration, better product improvement, best price evaluation. This is a very regimented and a very rigorous course that we teach companies on how to adapt. Because not all items should be treated the same way. Because there are such things as high spend and high critical items. They are very strategic items. You don't bid them. You actually partner closely with the suppliers. There are items that you can bid. There are items that you can actually partner much more closer with the suppliers. Next, please. Very important in realizing savings for your company. And still, many Filipino companies doesn't get it. But part of moving into strategic procurement is implementing digital procurement. This is the time that you don't have any more choice. Maybe last year you had choice on how to do your procurement. Mano-mano, manual lahat, corruption happens. In other countries, they say corruption happened in one country by giving money under the table. Then I heard somebody that they say in another country, they give money on top of the table. And I heard somebody, and I was very sad about what this person actually told me. You know what? In the Philippines, they also get the table, not only the money. So this is a very sad state. So there's an opportunity to create higher level of efficiency, transparency by using electronic procurement or digital marketplaces. Because the trend right now is moving from blockchain, artificial intelligence, next slide please, and cognitive learning. But before you can even move to these particular new technologies, you actually need to implement something that is most important and compelling to the organization. Things like reverse auction to save you some money. Things like electronic procurement so that you can use your procurement people to more strategic areas. Because you cannot just keep on doing paperwork. Paperwork things are going to be thing of the past. This slide will just tell you that all entities right now are moving into digitalization. And the first thing that you should digitalize is procurement, because that's where all of the savings opportunities are important. Next, please. There's going to be disruption as well. Technology is disrupting us. There's going to be some short-term scenario over here. There's going to be some long-term scenario here. Are you preparing yourself to be replaced by artificial intelligence? In our company, we have a product called cognitive learning, conversational AI. You know, if you want to understand the status of a customer or the order, you don't have to talk to any person. You just have to say it, and the status will be given to you by a robot who can actually process it through AI. So there are new skills that are needed, but then we remain to be very supportive of that, because there's a lot of back office requirement to be able to implement technology. Technology is not easy, but it's getting to be much more easier now because of what they call managed services. So there's going to be a move. Next slide, please. There's going to be a move also to improve logistics also going forward. But more than ever, you know, all of these things are going to be available on the cloud. We are trying to Uberize logistics in the Philippines. I'm going to make an announcement of that later on. Next, please. You can have all of these best practices, but this slide, next, please, that is going to be shared with you that is non-negotiable is ethics. Companies will be under scrutiny, focus, you know, and to be very obvious if they are doing some good things on the environment or bad thing on the environment. They want to see if they're taking care of their people and the society as a whole in a much more sympathetic way. If they are meeting their targets or their financial targets and shareholder or stakeholder returns and the like. All of these things cannot be forgone. Even though you're so efficient in your supply chain, something that is non-negotiable is to become a more ethical organization in the application of these best practices. Next, please. So I'm actually going to go to the last part of my presentation. So what can companies really do? Next, please. So if you take a look, if where you are right now, even we in PASIA have changed the way we do business. We do a lot of face-to-face trainings, a lot of face-to-face consultings. We do a lot of manual stuff, but right now everything for us is automated. Our consulting are done in Zoom. You know, our technologies are being deployed to companies because it's basically digitalization or online learning, as an example, is being applied now. This slide will actually show you that there are a lot of buyers having a lot of difficulty. These are people that are working in procurement. These are the companies that are buying items that they need to produce. They lack time. They don't have a pool of reliable and good suppliers. They cannot prove transparency and their integrity. You know, so there's a lot of problems for a buying organization. Everything seems to be using ERP, but the ERP systems doesn't really cope up with something that is easy for procurement people to use. And supplier challenges are also challenged. They don't know how to sell more, getting more available potential prospects or customers. And the problem of suppliers are also getting paid on time. You know, a lot of customers are killing the suppliers, not knowing that every time that they delay, these suppliers are borrowing money also to keep up with the requirements of their customers. So there has to be something. Next, please. So maybe we thought that if you are next slide, please. If you're actually very much involved into buying from B2C, yung B2C is the one that you're more exposed to. Lazada, Shopee, Zalora, Amazon. You know, I think most of you now are using one or two of these companies. You know, but the big part of it is not only on B2C. The B2B is the biggest e-commerce potential and market, no? And this has been very successful already because companies are buying from their suppliers, and suppliers are supplying to companies with the use of e-marketplace and e-procurement portals, and has been proven well in Japan, South Korea, and India. So for companies like you who are experiencing opportunities or what's the final opportunities for cost savings or efficiency, I think there's no more choice. If in the last 20 years it was an option, I think the last 3 to 6 months will never become an option if we want to keep on surviving. So you are encouraged to move your products and to buy from a single portal where everything is there already, from office supplies, next please, to everything that you actually need. So PASIA have established the e-procurement platform and e-marketplace, wherein we provide this service to many companies who wants to buy and wants to sell for business operations purposes. So we provide everything. We help companies on the planning side, logistics side. We provide the e-procurement and the e-payment side of the business. So it's a totally integrated where small, medium, and large companies could really adopt e-commerce and efficiency inside and towards their own respective companies. We're really so excited about this because companies are really excited and are logging in through it because they find that e-procurement is not about electronic procurement. E-procurement, next please, is what we call easy procurement. It's like buying from home in Lazada or something. It's like buying from home. It's like buying, like making buying at the office or for company use, like buying for items that you need at home. Let's put it that way. So we have lowered down. There's nothing to invest upfront where it used to be. If you're using already the big ERP systems, or if you're using already several other systems, or you have no system at all, next please, we could get you access into our marketplace. So this is really available for any size of company, both the buyer company or the supplying company. And whatever systems or no systems you actually have, we could actually integrate it to the marketplace or to our portal as well. So the key advantages and benefits is really, it makes everything efficient, transparent. But the more core advantage, like all of the suppliers who are here are well known to us. We have assessed them. We have conducted due diligence about the suppliers. And we actually integrate other value-added services, including automating payments to the suppliers. So the unique advantage here is very transparent, reliability and trust inside the marketplace. Because we have a solution which we call GPAS, where we actually assess suppliers on 8 parameters, from business legitimacy to financial to operation to health and safety and all of the 9. And we do it as a service for many suppliers. And suppliers are very happy because they are assessed, they are able to be opened up to new particular customers, and they get paid efficiently as well. So the other items that are included in the marketplace are office supplies, next please, safety supplies, healthcare supplies, marketing items. So the entire, anything is adaptable into the marketplace, including services as well. And as you see, we are going to pump this up with a lot of packaging, printing, and plastic suppliers. We are going to load them up so that anybody who wants to buy can actually access that particular portal going forward. And some of your customers may be mandating you anyway to actually put your catalogs because they're already registered with us. So the onboarding, quite very easy. Next, please. So the suppliers can actually board in 4 steps, and the buyers should actually get to work with us so that we could configure their business rules to our e-marketplace or e-procurement system as well. We are moving this also to different industry, So these industries will go to different industry, food and beverage, hospitals, manufacturing, are all going to buy from out of this particular single portal. So we're working with several industry associations also to consolidate all of their volume of spend towards this. I think the timing has just come right in place. So let me also invite you. You will learn more about this and best practices on supply chain next month. We have a free and paid a web conference where we bring a lot of speakers in the market, particularly from overseas, to talk about what are the best practices and what's coming, with the new normal in the area of supply chain. So this is actually on November 11 to 13. You might want to check us out, by emailing info@pasia.org. So what are we doing? We're making, next please, we're making the Philippines as the procurement and supply chain services center of the world. We always think that if we make organizations better in their supply chain, we in turn help the economy to become better. Can you just imagine if we have very poor supply chain, the SMEs are going to die. So the large companies are going to die also or be affected because they are very much reliant on the SME. So we think that if we're helping small companies to become good in the supply chain, we're helping the economy towards better nation building. And I hope that we have more chances on surviving COVID-19 or the pandemic, because what is needed in this country is better supply chain to make everything available in a more controlled and assisted way. So we call it supply chain bayanihan, because we need everybody's support to actually move and collaborate towards survival. And not only that, we want everybody to thrive after we actually overcome these challenges. So I'd like to thank you finally. And the best way to actually get to reach us is through our email, info@pasia.org. And our promise to the market and to the Philippines and to the region is like, it's very trying times, it's very difficult, but we will certainly never give up, because the supply chain is the backbone of your family. Supply chain is the backbone of your company and our nation as well. So thank you very much. Happy to answer any particular questions. Salamat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charlie Villaseñor. Kindly stay with us for the Q&A session. But before we proceed, here again are the house rules. There will be a Q&A portion at the end of the presentation. You may ask your questions using the chat box and send your questions to all panelists. It's possible that not all questions will be answered live, but we will email the list of questions and answers to all attendees after the webinar. We will now proceed with the Q&A session.
I was about to type, okay, my question, Mr. Charlie, but I'm having difficulty with the typing. Can I just ask it verbally?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Most of the printing, okay, companies here in the Philippines are family owned, and you may classify them as small to medium, large companies. Okay, there are only a few big printing companies, but most of them are small companies. And I was really intrigued by the fact that you guys are offering short courses, free, because a lot of us really do not understand what supply chain is. And I can see that if we understand what it is, it will also help us in our selling process. As you have said, printing is part of supply. So if we can understand it better, it's not just a matter of understanding where we can get better supplies, but also a matter of where we can sell our products, our services rather. So in that regard, okay, does your industry offer short courses, okay, to help us understand this more? Because as I have said, okay, most of us, okay, most of the printing companies are small, family-owned corporations, which, as you have said, okay, are not really familiar with this supply chain concept.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Actually, that's how we're actually seeing the market. You know what? We were surprised when COVID struck. A lot of small companies, medium-sized companies, family-owned, Chinese-owned, they come to us, and they're saying like they're struggling. They know things are changing. They have some issues to contend with, and the first thing that we normally is to do an assessment. So we try to do a teleconsulting assessment to be able to guide them what's real, what are the real gaps and what are the real opportunities and how we can help them. And it's true. Training their people is one step, and we have short courses, we have online courses to do that for them, and they find it very helpful. So it's scheduled in our website, so they can actually see when the trainings are going to happen, and they can just select which one is actually good for them. But training is not enough, because yung training, they are not sure whether they're going to implement this inside their company or not. So it really requires what we call an executive sponsor. Sinong may-ari, and if the person or the business owner really is committed to transform their supply chain. But the way we do it is like we show them the numbers, we show them what they're not doing well, and we show them what could be done and how much potential money can they be able to accumulate and save. and it impacts customer service, because it's not just saving money, it has to enhance customer service and making sure that the suppliers are going to be able to support them once the business gets on growing. You know what? I can just imagine the amount of sluggishness that maybe the printing industry is facing right now, right? Because people are trying to avoid contact on physical documentation or what have you. But let's be honest, let's really open up the problem. Until you really open up the problem, then you cannot solve the real problem that you're trying to solve. So it's going to impact, you know, and what are the other things that the companies could actually do to re-engineer their business model and the like. There's so much things to say, but what I'm saying is, yeah, we're available for the trainings, but the owner or the business executive should really commit itself to do what is necessary for their supply chain, because you live and die with the supply chain, right? If you cannot submit the products or services to your customers, there's no business to talk about.
In that regard, because we belong to an association, a small association called the PCP, the Printing Center for Philippine Printing Center for Philippine Excellence. Okay, can we coordinate with your PASIA to find out how your group can help small printers like most of our members?
You know what? That's a good point. You need to act as on a consolidated basis, not to just make profit, but to survive. If we are all working separately, your competition is killing you. You know, I'm gonna tell you one secret and one actual case. One of the largest courier company in the country used to buy from a local plastic pouch manufacturer. He found a better price in China. You know, totally put and place all of the orders out of the country. We didn't benefit because all of those things are now coming from another country. Supply chain can close you anytime, and you don't have the scale, you don't have the expertise, you don't have the magnitude of of leverage. So you know what? Even competitors need to work together just to survive this. So industry approach is going to be very important. We can dedicate, you know, a little bit of a focus towards your industry to help them in many ways, not only sourcing, but really planning for survival. Because at the end of the day, it's all about numbers. You're all managing your working capital. But there could be a lot of things that you can do together rather than operating in silos. So we're quite open to that.
Okay. Mr. Charlie, I think there are other questions, okay, in your chat box. Can you see them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to answer one of the interesting questions here. The last question. Can I read it?
Yes, sir.
Sabi nila, there was a question here. In 2000, Buy and Trade visited and consulted me regarding putting items on catalog. Ideal are those corporated identity materials, packaging materials. You know what? Yung Buy and Trade, I was the first executive that was hired by the 6 largest conglomerates. I left my job in Caltex as head of Asia, Middle East, and Africa, and I took the job as COO. We were too early for supply chain, for e-commerce then. 2000, imagine, we were talking about e-commerce. If we just continued doing this, I think we could have really went ahead of Alibaba or Amazon. So, you know what? I continued doing this in the last 20 years. And I think it's our time to reap the benefits over here, because everything now will really go online e-catalog. So if you have your products and you want it to be a catalog and you want customers to access it and buy from you, talk to us. I think we could really help you. The terms and the conditions from 2000 is very much different from the terms and conditions of 2020. So much has changed. It's better now to actually move into this particular arena. Much more easy, and there's no investment actually, especially coming from the supplier side. You actually get a transaction cost for every successful purchase from your company. So it's really, you know, pay as you make the sale. So it's a very transaction related type of undertaking. So this is the real time to actually get this thing moving. Wala namang ibang choice eh. May choice pa bang iba? With all of the things that is happening as this soon, it's just a matter of months. We're not even counting years here na ma-automate yung buying and selling for corporations. And we're really busy hiring a lot of people out there to actually create all of these catalogs. Magkakaroon ng platform yan, payments, including logistics, because there's really no choice. Yep. Would you like me to read the other questions?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
I'm not picking it. I'm just what I see. How can SME enter online B2B market? Are there platforms for this? Oh yeah, I told you about my presentation. Contact info@pasia.org. We have our supplier enablement team there. If you have products that you want to sell, we have the supplier management team. But if you are also a company that wants to buy electronically items that you need, from office supply to what have you, to services, to construction, whatever, just try to get our team to actually talk to you on how they can actually help you, especially if you're an SME. Because we have a package for SME, but we have also a package for large and medium or semi-medium company. I hope I answered that well. There's another question here. All that were discussed are very ideal, but for the printing industry, reality, not all printed items can be put on catalog, especially those trade and marketing projects with a lot of process involved. Yes and no, but the technology has really evolved so much. I could take this thing offline, pero kami before, like in Caltex, lahat ng mga flyers, brochures, posters, annual, lahat yan nakakatalog na lahat. Wala na kami hindi kinakatalog ngayon. And there are now electronic procurement system that it's tied with the printing company. Printing company has to adapt integration with more advanced companies who have e-procurement or marketplace. Kasi the design pays itself. You know what? We used to bid our buying of printed materials. We implemented more improvements like strategic sourcing. We tried to understand the supplier's cost. GSM, how many cuts, how many folds. We developed what we call rate cards, and we standardized in our e-catalog system. Sometimes we even tell the suppliers what we're willing to pay and what we're not willing to pay. The procurement has advanced so much, and you should see how this thing is going to evolve more for the printing industry, especially now that everything is digitalized. They can actually connect their requirements to your printing factory. And you can actually set up the terms and conditions before you actually get to finalize it. And it happens into electronic procurement marketplaces also. So there are quite a new advances now on this particular area. And that's the thing. They're trying to find where the gap is. The more gaps that you show, the more these technology companies are going to address them, because they know that there's no way to go, but it's not going to continuously grow manual. Obviously, everything is just going to go digital. Do you consider, there's another question here, do you consider the resellers are in the supply chain business? Yeah, because resellers, they create value. Sometimes they provide better service, they consolidate the volume, and they can offer better prices, diba? Yung mga resellers. But resellers are also looked into just like middleman. And many more companies, when they buy, they want to cut out the middleman in many aspects, diba? So you have to be watch out. I'm not all saying that it's all good to become a reseller. It's good to be a reseller, but also watch out, because technology are starting to disintermediate those that doesn't provide any value in the supply chain. Will you advise to start a new business in supply chain? Is this the right timing for a small business? Please do not start if you're just starting now. It took us 30 years to get things going. You need a lot of time to actually build knowledge. If you're not coming from a supply chain background, if you cannot recruit, this is not like a BPO center that you can hire people to become call center. This is a knowledge process outsourcing company. This is not like Lechon Manok or a printing company that you can hire people, buy the machines, get the suppliers, and start producing. A supply chain company is an IP company. It's an intellectual property company that has a lot of technology and domain expertise along that. So those, I think, were the questions that were actually sent out. Yeah, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer all of them. But this is what I'm actually seeing in the chat box for now. Did I miss anything? I'm not too sure.
Well, there will be a lot of questions, but
Yeah.
I'm tempted to ask this question
Sure.
to you. uh, it is said that the current economic uncertainty we are experiencing is somehow related to the health concern, which is COVID-19. Okay, so and a lot of people are saying that in order to get past this pandemic, we need to have a vaccine for this. So, being in the supply chain business, what do you think is the realistic timetable wherein the Philippines will get this vaccine?
You know, that's a very good question, and I'm happy to answer that question. You know, you know what, vaccines, when they're developed, it takes around 10 years to develop a vaccine. Alam natin yung, we've read it, we've talked to doctors. It's not easy to produce vaccine. It gets into several layers of activities or gates before it can actually pass. You know, a lot of people said it will be available in November. It's not going to be available in November. My answer to that is like, my best guess, fourth quarter of 2021, that could be the earliest for us. So it's not going to happen in first or second quarter. Kung maswerte siguro third quarter. Producing it is one thing. Distributing it is another thing. You know, that's why I am very vocal and telling several countries and nations. So what is the plan because I got trained by by UNICEF on what we call vaccine supply chain immunization. When you transfer this vaccine in big quantities, you need a cold chain system, logistic system to handle that. You know, it's temperature controlled. There are equipments, there are devices that are necessary to be placed all the way until it reaches the person in Tawi-Tawi or Hulo. And if we are not preparing now, we're losing a lot of time already. This has to be very transparent as to what is our plan and our supply chain execution model to be able to do it. We cannot just receive these vaccines and start figuring out how to actually make this available. So to answer the question, manage your expectation lang. It's not going to happen. Baka mag-spill pa yan over the next following year.
So it will reach the presidential election 2022.
I hope that will not be used in influencing the constituency to make the vaccine available. But that can happen, right? And even with the vaccine, do you really think that people like you will submit yourself to get injected with the vaccine? Would you like to become the first one to get injected with the vaccine? You know, and anybody here would like to be the first people or who wants to be injected. Simply, we still think about it if that is also the right vaccine or the right time to actually start getting it, because we all know that all of these vaccines were done in a hurry.
Yes. Anyway, thank you very much, Mr. Charlie. Thanks to everyone. Due to the time that has been given for this, we will be ending the question and answer session. But don't worry, we will email the list of questions and answers to all the attendees after the webinar. Thank you very much again.
Thank you so much. Call us anytime.
That wraps up today's sessions. We will be resuming our sessions at 10 a.m. tomorrow, October 9, Friday. Thank you for participating, and we will see you in the next session.